Hello, hello. This is the Maya Artifact episode number 3660. Today's date is October 27, 2025. It's been almost like a morning at 8:12 a.m. All right, let's just jump into the question. Okay, let's go. All right, the question is, what if Mayan calendar predict the future accurately? Okay, yeah, that is a really good question. First of all, what exactly is this question and why am I asking this question to myself? This is what if question. Why am I asking this question to myself? What if question is always really interested way to give the answer. It kind of like actually force you to think about different reality or different perspective of looking at the world. The perspective of that particular world depends on detail of knowledge. Okay, yeah. So when I try to implement that particular knowledge, I kind of like a somewhat somewhere getting or maybe kind of like a repeat that knowledge inside of my brain. I'm not really sure, but like I don't know. I just try to connect the dots regarding about this situation and stuff like that. Okay, I don't know how do I supposed to explain this stuff, but it felt really good. It felt something that I have something inside of my head that I wanted to kind of like simply release, and this question is kind of like simply make me do that. So it's really good. Disclaimer: the information that I'm trying to tell you is not exactly right or is not exactly wrong either. It's just my opinion. It's raw, it's unfiltered. Okay. So do not take this information very seriously or do not seek this information very seriously or do not, yeah, it's just my opinion. You need information, go to the internet, search for it. I am explaining this thing, I'm just explaining my opinion. Okay, that's it. All right. So everyone agree? All right, let's proceed. Now the question is that what if the Mayan calendar are predicted future very accurately? First of all, let's just understand couple of things. Okay, who is Mayan and what exactly is this thing? So the human civilization that are exist right now. Okay, yeah, the human civilization, the you and me are kind of like things. Like I am from India, so I am Indian. I don't know you are okay where you are from, but where you are from, maybe kind of like some US, Europe, Australia, or any part of the world. Okay, you are belong to that particular region, right? Yeah, let's just say you are American. So you are American means you are born and raised in America and stuff like that. Okay, now what I'm trying to tell you is this thing: we are human civilization. Okay, yeah, but we actually come from one single human. Okay, yeah, and that single human is actually born in Africa. Okay, yeah, so means all around the world the human that we are actually seeing is kind of like comes from Africa. Okay, the evolution of the humans actually started from America, and then they kind of like somebody started migration from one to another. Okay, like basically one person born, another person born, another person born, and then after that kind of like I realized that there is a kind of like a multiple places in the world that kind of like a somebody really good for habitat, like a really good for foods and shelter and things like that. So they are migrating. Okay, yeah. So that's why like there are so many people are all around the world. Okay, yeah, like basically in every part of the world you can see the people. All right, yeah. By the way, it's not just happening just like 100 year 200 year. No, it happened millions of year. Yeah, so so basically don't it's happened like a millions of years. Oh yeah. Now basically what exactly happened, the cluster of the people kind of like some of the cluster of the people went to kind of like some Egypt called Egyptian. The cluster of the people went to kind of like a something the Italy or bottom part of Italy called as a kind of like a Mesopotamia. The cluster of people went to kind of like a some Indus river in South Asia, Indus Valley civilization. The cluster of the people went to kind of like a some China or yellow river, that is called kind of like a something Chinese civilization. Okay, some of the cluster of the people went to Siberia. Those Siberian people went to kind of like some US, and basically is this thing millions of years ago the Alaska and Siberia was actually connected. Like basically is this thing the bridge between the kind of like a Russia to kind of like a some US, like a US Canada. Okay, yeah, the Alaska is actually connected by the bridge. Okay, yeah, that bridge was actually kind of like there is a land area. Okay, like basically at the time there is fully covered by ocean, But when the ice age, like a entire kind of like assembly water is kind of like assembly frozen, so at that time that people can easily went through from Siberia to kind of like assembly Alaska, and from Alaska to kind of like a went to Canada, to kind of like a US, to kind of like a Mexico, to the Brazil, and kind of like a South America. All right, so this is what kind of like a human civilization happened. Okay, yeah. Important thing is that some of the cluster are kind of like a went to US and America too, and some of the cluster went to kind of like a Mexico and things like that. Those cluster went to kind of like a South America, those called kind of like a Aztec civilization, Mayan civilization. All right, yeah. By the way, these civilization, it just not just happened just kind of like at same time. No, like the difference between those civilization happened kind of like hundreds of years of gaps. Okay, yeah. But still, those are kind of cluster of civilization. Those are cluster of people called civilization. Okay, and at that time there is a bunch of kind of like a civilization was exist. Okay, yeah. Mayan civilization, Indus Valley civilization, Chinese civilization, Egyptian civilization. Okay, yeah. Then Mesopotamia. There are a lot of kind of like a civilization was actually exist. Okay, now get it. So this is the Mayan civilization I'm talking about. These are Mayan civilization are actually from South America. I'm not really sure South America or kind of like assembly the Mexico part of it. I'm not really sure of the exact location, but this is what it is. Okay, yeah. Now this is kind of like assembly cluster of people who are like I'm talking about also kind of like assembly almost like thousands of years ago. Okay, yeah. Now these are the Mayan civilization. Okay, first thing you understand who is Mayan people. Okay, these are the Mayan civilization. All right, yeah. Mayan civilization from South America. Now, let me give you another perspective. All right, yeah. Let's just say that one person is kind of like a simply just doing a round. Okay, let's just say that I am a person like basically I am running in a ground. Okay, yeah. Let's just say ground is a round. Okay, yeah. Like let's just say it's a cricket ground. It's kind of like a simply round. Okay, a circle. So I am kind of like a running from, yeah. So I'm running in circle. Now basically is this thing. I'm giving you simple calculation. Okay, yeah. So then we kind of like proceed further. Okay, yeah. Now I am started running. Okay, let's just say I started running from 0:00 second. Okay, yeah. Now after a 4 minute 33 second, I came to the same point because the circle, because of the round, right? Yeah. So my entire round is actually done in 4.5 minutes. Like let's just say 5 minutes. Okay, in 5 minutes I complete the round. Right? Yeah. I'm gonna ask second question. I'm gonna ask question. Okay, yeah. How much time do I really require to complete 2 rounds? If I need a kind of like assembly one round to take 5 minutes, how much time do I really require to complete 2 rounds? Obviously 5 into 2, that means 10 minutes, right? Very easy, right? How much time do I really require to complete 3 rounds? 15 minutes. How much time do I really require to 4 rounds? 20 minutes, right? Simple calculation. 5 into 2, 5 into 3, 5 into 4. Yeah, simple calculation, right? So that means what exactly happened? That means I could predict that, like basically the third person can predict that how much time do I really require to complete 10 round. I haven't really completed the 10 round, by the way. I'm at kind of like only 5 round, but I could predict that how much time do I really require to complete the 10 round. Simple. Okay, yeah. How much time do I really require? 50 minutes. Okay, yeah. 5 into 10, that means 50 minutes. Okay, yeah. So even if I didn't really complete the 10 round, but still I could predict that I would complete kind of like a simply 10 round in 50 minutes. Right? Simple. Okay. This is what kind of like assembly is this thing that you have to understand. Okay. You understand till this moment? Alright, yeah. Now, this is what exactly happened with the kind of like assembly Mayan civilization. Okay, yeah. What exactly happened in the Mayan civilization? Okay, yeah. Now, basically at that time, okay, yeah, let's just say kind of like South America is very fertile land. Okay, yeah, Amazon and stuff like that. It's a very fertile land. There is a kind of like a lot of kind of like assembly grass and a lot of forest area was there. Okay, yeah. So because of this thing, it's kind of like assembly, the land is really fertile. So agriculture is kind of like happened very easily. Okay, at that time people are actually doing the agriculture. Okay, agriculture or hunting or things like that. But mostly doing their kind of like assembly agriculture. Okay, yeah. Now basically is this thing that they realize that the rain is actually happen at some certain part of time. Okay, yeah. And then after that rain stop. Okay, yeah. Like basically is this thing they realize that after 8 months rain is actually happen. And this is what exactly same cycle is actually repeat in itself. And they kind of like curious that how is exactly happen after the 8 months. Because it was kind of like some this thing that they don't know what is actually is this thing. Like basically we know that seasonally actually happened because of the year. Like basically is this thing that June, July is a kind of like a month that kind of like rain is actually happen. Okay, yeah, because of seasonal changes. Okay, yeah. We knew it is because of that we are modern, we are living in modern society. We knew all the kind of like a weather cycle. We knew about the kind of like how the earth rotates in around the suns and things and that, and how much it kind of like a change in weather patterns and stuff like that. We knew all those stuff because of we are living in modern world. Those people didn't really knew that. Those Mayan people, I'm talking about almost like maybe 5,000 years ago, 5,000 or 10,000 years ago. I'm not really sure exact time, but yeah. But those people didn't really know how this actually happened. They are kind of like a bitterly fumble that why this actually happened. Like there is a couple of kind of like some cycle is repeating in itself. So they are started kind of like calculating that rain is kind of like a came at probably at some certain time, and every single time it's kind of like a came at that time. There is no year, there is no calendar, there is no kind of like a September, October, November. No, there is no month at all. They just kind of like they don't know, but they don't know. They know that there is something at specific amount of time rain is actually happened. Okay, so they are started kind of like somebody creating a calendar. Okay, because they really required a kind of like some time, because their entire civilization actually based on that fertilizer. They are based on kind of like some agriculture and things like that, and they just wanted to know that where is this kind of like somebody started and where is this kind of like somebody end. So they are kind of like a predicting that when the rain is actually happened. They are kind of like predicting that when the rain is actually happen and things like that. And for that prediction, they kind of like create the calendar called Mayan calendar. All right, yeah. Now at that time they just called calendar. We kind of like only called as a Mayan calendar, but it's a kind of like a calendar. Okay, yeah. Now is this calendar is kind of like a look like us, like basically in today's calendar we have kind of like a 12 months, 13 days and 7 days of weeks and stuff like that. Does they have that thing? I am not really sure. Does they have not? Okay, yeah. But there is a one thing for sure. Okay, yeah. In that calendar there is a one thing for sure is that in this particular calendar they kind of like predict that when the rain is actually happen. Okay, by the way, is this thing that if I'm kind of like say calendar, we actually kind of like somebody inside our mind we kind of like imagine that months and weeks and kind of like okay, yeah, because this is what kind of like we've been seen through as a calendar. If I'm kind of like seeing a calendar, like basically if I'm kind of like think about calendar, this is what kind of like some image that I kind of like create inside of my head, right? But at that time, like think about those people who are kind of like thousands of years. They don't know nothing about the time. They don't know nothing about the week, months, nothing really at all. Okay, yeah. So how does they make calendar? They predict that when the rain comes. Same thing example is this thing that if I'm kind of like running, like basically it took me almost like 5 minutes to complete one round. So basically is this thing that I could predict that when this person complete the 10 round, how much time? Like a 50 minute. Same thing those people did that. Those people kind of like did that kind of like somebody the rain is actually happened for this particular amount of kind of like a significant amount of time. So they are kind of like predicting that might be in the next year there will be kind of like a rain will gonna happen at this particular period of time. Okay. So they are started predicting that particular cycle, the rain cycle and things like that. And those prediction are accurate. So much accurate, which is kind of like a very much common. Like we already knew that rain is actually happen in June, July month. I'm not really sure about in your world. Probably belong to the India, and India June, July is a kind of like a month where kind of like a rain is actually heavily happened. Okay, June, July, August, September. These are kind of like a month that heavily rainfall is actually happening in India. In another part of world might be kind of like the weather cycle might be kind of like something very different, but still somehow kind of like somewhat something really similar. Okay, you know that when the kind of like a winter is actually started, you know that when the rain is actually started and things like that, right? Yeah. So this is what kind of like they are started predicting when the rain is actually happen, and those prediction kind of like somewhat something right. Okay, yeah. Now that's it, right? but they kind of like did even more further. Okay, yeah, because of their prediction is kind of like something really accurate, and those prediction are kind of like something happen is because of looking at the sky and things like that. So they wanted to know how this thing actually happened. So they are looking at the sky, they are looking at the kind of like some stars and moons and things and stuff like that. They also kind of like seeing the eclipse. They also seen that the kind of like some the moon eclipse, solar eclipse and stuff like that. Okay, so they also kind of like predicting that when the solar eclipse will gonna happen, when the moon eclipse is gonna happen and stuff like that. They kind of like see the different shapes of the moon is kind of like somebody seen every single night. So they are kind of like predicting the moon pattern. They are kind of like predicting the kind of like sun pattern and things like that. By the way, I'm talking about almost like thousands of years. Okay, it's not just kind of like somebody 1 or 2 year of experience. No, they are kind of like some study about the sky and things about that when this actually happen and stuff like that. Okay, yeah. So they are kind of like predicting the every major event, okay, regarding about when the rain happened, when the eclipse happened, when the solar eclipse happened and things and that and that. Why? Is because the example that I told you earlier, that if I complete the round in 5 minutes, the how much time do I really require to 10 round, right? So same, they are kind of like doing this thing. They like, did they invent mathematics? Okay, like basically for this example we are kind of like a multiply by 5 into 2. Okay, so did they kind of like somebody did any kind of like a multiplication or any kind of like addition, subtraction? No, nothing. I don't know how they actually did it. I don't know how they kind of like calculate things, stuff like that. But they, I don't know. I kind of like never really read about that particular kind of like a something their civilization, how they actually kind of like calculate stuff. But probably is this thing na ki they kind of like started counting as a kind of like a day and night. Okay, like basically the days actually happened, the one day, okay, and another day, like then after night and then day. So probably is a 1 day, then 2 days, then 3 day. Okay, it's very common to count in today's world, but at that time I'm not really sure how they count. But they kind of like started count at something at somewhere, maybe kind of they are using candles or shadows or kind of like a stick, or I don't know how is it, but they are kind of like started calculating stuff regarding about when the rain is actually happen, when the eclipse gonna happen, when the all the stuff gonna happen. Okay, yeah. Now because of this thing, their Mayan civilization are kind of like a believe in their calendar a lot, because their all the predictions are kind of like a going really right. Okay, yeah. And this is what kind of like a something that makes them that, okay, what if we could kind of like a create the calendar for the future. Okay, yeah. So they are kind of like a predicting the future about everything, like when the tsunami will gonna came, when the kind of like a rise water will gonna happen. They are kind of like study about the sky and weather patterns, look at around themselves, and try to kind of like somebody put all those things into the kind of like a notes and try to kind of like a merge into the one calendar. Okay, yeah, that is we call it as a kind of like somebody calendar. Now you and I don't know, you and I basically is this thing that have you seen a movie named 2012? Okay, yeah, like it's a kind of like only the very disaster catastrophe regarding about this movie. This movie is kind of like telling that in 2012, okay, yeah, 2012, the end of the world will gonna happen. How this is actually happened? Okay, yeah, this actually happened is because of the Mayan civilization. The Mayan civilization predict that at kind of like 31st of December 2012, okay, yeah, the end of our human civilization. Okay, yeah. How they predict that much long. Okay, yeah. By the way, is this thing that they didn't really predict. Okay, actually is this thing like what is actually happened. Okay, yeah, because of they are really good at predicting things. They are really good at kind of like when the rain will gonna happen and things and that and that and that. So they kind of like did the prediction till 2012, not 2012, 2012. Okay, yeah. Like and they kind of like a thought that might be kind of like a human civilization might gonna die after that. Okay, because let me tell you one thing, this actually happened almost like thousands of years ago, and they predict almost like thousands of year future ahead, right? So probably they think that there no kind of like a human might not gonna exist in that particular period of time. So we might consider that at the 2012 might be human civilization will gonna die because of the kind of like the natural disaster and stuff like that, right? So they think that this is the end of the day. Okay, but that is not the end of the day. Like basically we actually survive. Okay, this artifact is actually recording at 27 of October 2025, so it's been almost like yeah. Okay, Get it? But because of they kind of like a predict almost like a thousands of year ago, and when the archaeologists people are kind of like a found that they kind of like a predict the kind of like a calendar which kind of like a leads to that 2012 the end of the human civilization and things like that. So there is a kind of like so much people are kind of like believe that stuff and stuff like that. Okay, yeah, because yeah, different kind of like a people who thinks very differently and stuff like that. Whatever. Okay, yeah. So because of kind of like so many people are kind of like a believe in kind of like a something Mayan calendar. By the way, also let me give you the context. Okay, yeah. It's a very weird thing regarding about the Mayan civilization. Okay, yeah. Mayan civilization are believe in offering. Okay, yeah. They kind of like a believe in a kind of like a somebody god is actually exist who kind of like a controls the when the sun rise, when the rain will gonna happen, when the night gonna happen. Like basically they believe that there is something who kind of like control everything. Okay, yeah. And we need to make him happy. Okay, we need to make him happy. So how do I supposed to make him happy? We offering a food. Okay, yeah. So basically what kind of like a food that kind of like a god wants. Okay, yeah. So probably that Mayan civilization, I'm not really sure is this kind of like a Mayan civilization or Aztec civilization, but probably is this thing that other civilization, let's just say like in Christianity or any kind of like somebody, let's just say like a Mesopotamia or Egyptian or Indus Valley civilization, or I'm not really sure, but other civilization are kind of like a how. झोपाचा